A battle to the death. Classic albums clash until there's only one left. A killer contest, but before we get to it, there's rules to this game, so let me tell you how we do it. 8 classic albums, 1 classic year. Draw 'em out the hat and chew the fat right here. We rate 'em, relate 'em, discuss 'em and debate 'em, analyze the beats and quote the lyrics verbatim. When all is said and done, we put it to the vote and tell you which of them is one. Then it's to the semis and the final for the vinyl cassette or CD. So who will it be? We going all in, so on the sound of the whistle, let the games begin. Record shot. To the hip, dip, the hop, you don't stop.
Hello and welcome to Hip Hop World Cup, the podcast that pits golden age hip hop albums against each other in a contest to find the ultimate champion. I'm your host, Danny Phillips, and joining me in our state-of-the-art studio 60 feet beneath FIFA headquarters in Zurich are Steve Hitchcock. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, everyone.
And James Larry Luscombe. How you doing?
Hi, how you doing? Good, thanks.
Yeah, that's good to hear. In this episode, we're looking at the year 1993. And if you'll just indulge me, chaps, cast your minds back to 93. We were a few years into secondary school. Tease Me by Chakademus and Pliers was riding high in the hit parade.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg was terrorizing audiences with digital dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. And Nicholas Lyndhurst's vehicle Goodnight Sweetheart started life on BBC One. But most relevant, obviously, it was a year in hip hop that had lots of gems, but also saw a flood of kind of hip hop artists that mainly had bald heads, big coats, Timberland boots, and made music with lots of men shouting on the chorus, and that's pretty much what we kind of got in 1993 in the world of hip hop. There were some exceptions, but that's pretty much the way I saw it. It's a very distinct style of production and rapping in this year. So yeah, what are your thoughts on 1993, like as a whole, an era of hip hop?
Yeah, it's quite shouty, isn't it? I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, there's Black Moon. There's quite a bit of shouting. That shouting on the choruses.
Yeah.
Wu-Tang Clan, Bring the Ruckus. That's just sort of shouting, really.
ODB likes a good shout as well.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Like
got Onyx, obviously.
Yeah, Onyx, just a posse of people just in the booth, like just shouting a hook, and it works much of the time. And in the videos, obviously, that makes for very sort of lively, boisterous videos with big groups of men jumping around. And making a bit of a ruckus. But
it's a really raw and gritty year, isn't it? Most of the music is just raw and gritty, and that's kind of reflected in the videos and the rappers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of groups that had names like Roughnecks and, bowl heads and sort of hood rats and things like that. Yeah, really distinctive kind of rapping style, distinctive kind of production. It hadn't quite sort of matured through to like the 95, 96 sort of sound where there's a lot more crispness. It was still quite a muddy kind of hardcore boom bap sort of sound.
Yeah.
I can sort of hear that 1993 sound. It's quite interesting. But that's cool. Any other thoughts on 93, Steve?
Yeah, lots of good albums. Like a good range of albums that haven't made it into this World Cup, but actually still good albums. I think in some of the other years we've kind of struggled to think, beyond maybe 15 decent albums. But I had a really long list of albums that I liked. So yeah, I think this is where hip hop's just starting to kind of gather some pace.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like you say, when we did our initial shortlist, I had 27 albums on mine.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I had to really whittle that down. It's really hard. So there's some really good albums in this year. So it's going to be difficult coming up with a winner. All right, just to recap for anyone who hasn't heard the show before, what we've done is we've whittled it down to the best 8 albums of 1993, put them in a hat, drawn them out against each other in matches, and then what we do, we discuss each match and we vote on a winner, and then the winner of each match goes through to the semi-final where they play the winners again, and then through to a final eventually in a World Cup format. So before we go on, Larry, is True Score all back up and running again?
Yeah, running beautifully. Last time, I think we had some lyrics caught up in one of the music pipes, didn't we? Yeah. I called out one of the. He's actually a retired Leyland DAF engineer. If you can imagine, like a Fred Dibner type of figure. comes around, Flat Cap, northern guy, comes around to sort of service it every so often, and yeah, he really got in there and cleared out some of the gunk. A lot of lyrics in there, some stray kind of drum sounds and things like that, but he's scooped all of that out, giving it a really good oiling out. It stinks of WD-40 to the rafters, really, but it's really running silky smooth, like clockwork. In fact, it is clockwork.
Was he a hip hop head? Did he have to kind of have that kind of background to fix it?
He doesn't at all. He's a purely technical sort of engine man. Doesn't like music at all, actually. That's quite good. He doesn't let it get in the way.
Yeah.
Like he can be completely objective about it. To him, it's just a machine.
Yeah.
He has an affinity with it.
And I imagine
one of the original designers.
And I imagine with so many great albums in '93, it's been running fairly hot this week. Smooth, but it's been really pushing the pipes and pushing.
It
the
has,
valves.
yeah. It's pushing. The valves are really sort of glowing, nice and warm.
Oh, nice. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, cool. Right, before we go on, I'll just mention that after the final, we've got a guest joining us later on. Experienced sports broadcaster and West Brom fan Adrian Chiles will be joining us just after the
that'll be good.
Just after the final, just to give us his thoughts on our winner. And without further ado, let's get on to the honourable mentions from 1993, because obviously we do a long short list of albums. And we whittle it down to our favourite 8, but naturally there's a big list of albums that don't make the cut, and there's some great stuff in there. And before we head into the honourable mentions, I just want to read out an email we've had from a friend of the show.
One of the from what patron is this?
No, it's just a friend of the show. I'll just read it. It says,
okay.
"Dear Hip Hop World Cup, big fan since episode 1. Love the True Score stuff." It says, "When you do your 1993 episode, please make sure you talk about Trends of Culture's debut album, Trends.
Oh yeah,
as it was one of my favourites from back in the day, and one of the most underrated and slept on hip hop albums of all time.
Yeah.
In '93, I would pop it on my Sony Walkman while doing my accounts or pruning my shrubs. My favourite track was Hassle on the Iron Horse. Anyway, keep up the good work. Yours sincerely, Sepp Blatter. P.S. Did you get the bank transfer? Oh, no, that's something else. But yeah, so that's nice. Sepp's written to us. Glad to know he's still listening.
I thought it was going to be a letter from like Panny Dillips or something.
Oh, that's you'd think from that, because I also like that album, but no, it was directly from the office of Sepp Blatter. I mean, he raises an interesting point. Trends of Culture was my sort of key honourable mention in this year. It's not a celebrated album. It's not one that a lot of people know, but it's one that I absolutely loved back in the day. One of these albums, it could have just got lost in the flood of those type of albums with that sort of typical 93 sound, but I think it just sort of stands above the others because it's got a really kind of jazzy, smooth sound to it. And it's one of the albums I just could listen to all the way through. I think
it's a good album.
On it. It's a good album. The MCs, Grapevine and Nasty. It's had a really good back and forth between them. Two very different voices, very different styles, but they really complement each other. And I don't know, it's just one of my kind of like, I don't want to call it a guilty pleasure because I think it's a really good album, but it's just one of those that I love. So I just wanted to give that some props in the honourable mention section. Did you two have any you wanted to talk about?
I mean, for me personally, not really. I mean, I struggled to come up with 8, to be honest. as you'll recall, I only came out with 7. And the only one that isn't on the list is 187 he wrote by Spice One.
Yeah.
And I'm really not, completely upset that it's not in there because it's just it's all right. There's some good, there's like 3 or 4 good tracks on there that I could have made a good case for, but I don't think it would have been winning any prizes, to be honest. If it had
Trigger Got No Heart.
That's brilliant.
Running Out the Crack House are my 2 favourite on that. Brilliant.
I'm the fucking murderer.
Yeah.
Brilliant track.
It really nails his colours to the mast on that track, doesn't he? And but unfortunately, kind of 2 tracks a good album do not make. So it didn't quite make the cut. I mean, there's loads of other stuff that came up in our discussions and lists and stuff like this, Steve.
I've got to mention some because I thought it was a really good year. So I'm going to do my kind of like, I don't know, I say this pretty much in every World Cup. Tupac didn't make it. His first album, strictly for my own word. It was, I think it's a half decent album. I can see why you two didn't go for it, but it's quite well regarded. And then
I have to, before you move on, I go along with that. It was one I listened to, and I only realised that I used to listen to it loads back in the day because it's got loads of really good tracks on it, and it was very unlucky not to make my list, to be honest with you, because I actually really do like that album.
Yeah,
there's a few.
It is a good album.
But
It's not perfect, so I'm not that worried it's not in the World Cup.
Yeah.
And then Dale didn't make it, and like in my eyes, No Need for Alarm is better than I Wish My Cousin George was here. So I was disappointed you two didn't choose that, but I think Larry, we discussed this. The production for you wasn't quite up to it.
To me, I really like. What's the track that I said I liked in it? Do you remember? Wrong Place. Is Wrong Place on that album?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I really like that. But the rest of it just doesn't really grab me. There's something about the production style, the kind of sample sources that he's kind of going for, just don't grab me in the same way as his debut did.
Yeah. I think not as much personality.
I think his kind of first album is the best, and he hasn't really done anything to touch it since, to be honest. Although, you've got plenty of good tracks, and I really like some of his more recent stuff. But that one just wasn't for me, really.
And then just very quickly, there's Fat Joe Represent, which I think is a really solid album. Lords of the Underground, which I think is a really good album, really kind of like funky, upbeat album. And another kind of rapper that gets overlooked pretty much every World Cup is KRS-One and Return of the Boom Bap, and that's got some classic KRS tracks on it. I think Sound of the Police is on that one.
Yeah, as I say, tons of albums that could have kind of made the cut for some very big artists, but I think, we're dealing with kind of personal preference, and we're dealing with some very, very big celebrated albums in our top 8. So, it was really going to be hard to make the cut. So let's just go on to the 8 that did make the list, which are as follows. Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggystyle, Eazy-E's It's On, the Dr. Dre 187 Killa. It's technically an EP, but we've included it here because it's kind of like 8 tracks. It feels more like an album, and we love it so much that we wanted to include it. In
the rock and roll world, like 8 tracks makes an album.
Yeah, definitely, certainly these days.
So
yeah, we've bent the rules slightly on that one. Not that we ever had a rule that you can't include EPs, but there you go. Black Moon, Enter the Stage. A Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders. Wu-Tang Clans, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. Souls of Mischief, 93 Till Infinity. Ice Cube's Lethal Injection, and Never Again by Cam. So that's the 8 qualifiers for the 1993 Hip Hop World Cup. Let's move on to round 1.
Hip Hop World Cup, round 1. Hip Hop World Cup, round 1. Hip Hop World Cup, round 1. Hip Hop World Cup, round 1.
So on to round 1, and the round 1 matches were drawn and played earlier today, and the first match saw Eazy-E's It's On up against Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggystyle in a clash of the West Coast Titans. Now, gents, this is a massive game. 2 bitter rivals going up against each other.
2 bitter rivals, definitely.
Local derby. So in this one, we had Doggystyle somewhat predictably winning 3-0, with all 3 of us voting for Doggystyle. Not really a surprise. Larry, what's your take on this match? Was that pretty much a foregone conclusion?
No, not at all, really. In fact, True Score has thrown up a bit of a shocker on this one. Although I did vote for Snoop, the True Score machine has come out slightly in favour of Eazy-E.
That doesn't sound like it's been calibrated properly.
I don't know. I think you're probably right. I think ultimately, I don't know, Snoop probably is better, isn't it? But I have a bit of a personal kind of affinity with the Eazy-E album stroke EP. So I don't know.
I mean, numbers are a powerful tool, but sometimes there's a bit more to it, a bit more subjectiveness comes into it and sort of muddies the result.
It's definitely a subjective thing, I think, but I haven't got only good things to say about Doggystyle either. So,
but don't you think the Eazy-E EP is a bit kind of like repetitive? It's kind of, I know it's like getting back. I'd say
the same for Doggystyle.
Yeah, true. But I think It's On Eazy-E. I mean, it's like an absolutely fascinating EP. You could do a whole show on it. It's such a interesting project. You know, obviously it's reactionary. He wanted to get something out to sort of diss Dr. Dre and hit back at him. Yeah. After all the stuff on the Chronic, and for that very reason alone, you know, we were obsessed with it back in the day, weren't we, Larry? You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know, a really weird sort of, you know, name checking Dre like that, putting in his name in the title, putting the picture of him on the cover, the inside cover, the sticker on the back having to say that it's got nothing to do with Dr. Dre. Just a really strange project, but the music in it is, you know, a really good example of a West Coast sound. It's really good, really hard. Really funky. There's, you know, the producers on there, they've done those beats, are producing some of their best work on there. Yeah.
Well, real MFGs is a great track, isn't it? It's the synth on there it's just amazing. Danny, I remember you putting this on a mixtape for me and listening to it and thinking, oh my god, what is he saying on here? This is like unbelievable. It's so aggressive in kind of. It's
a slightly it's a bit of a plodder musically of a track, but I love the kind of the theme and the lyricism on it so much that I don't sort of mind it.
No, it's it's a real sinister beat, isn't it? A real sinister piece of music.
I think if you kind of look at all of the kind of diss songs that came out, you know, as a result of the NWA fallout, this is, I mean, it's not quite up there with No Vaseline, but yeah, it is quite.
It's definitely up there.
Yeah, it's quite an excoriation, isn't it? Of Dre. I think that's the kind. I think this album, you have to kind of acknowledge the context of it and why it was kind of recorded, and I mean the whole NWA mythology and story is, you know, a really interesting thing to me, and the kind of the crux of it really is the fallout between like Eazy-E and Dr. Dre. I think like more than Ice Cube leaving.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, I think for that reason, it's a really dark, kind of almost nasty, angry album. I think he's venting a lot of his anger in
definitely.
It. And it's when you think about it, it's actually quite upsetting to listen to it when you know the story about what happens next. What happens next before and what happens next. It's just a really weird, you listen to it and you think, oh, this is a strange little time capsule of that period.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting about it, I mean, the theme of it really is that it's basically Eazy-E like calling out Dr. Dre as a fake kind of gangster, isn't he, basically? Whereas like Dre's beef with Eazy-E was that Eazy-E was a bit of a snake when it came to money and stitching the rest of the group up, which is a fair point. But yeah, what Eazy has done, what he's able to do is a lot worse than that. He's kind of exposed Dr. Dre as being like a fake hard man, which is like not something you want to be in hip hop at all. Like, you know, Dre's whole image was tied up in being, you know, from the streets and boasting about criminal activity, Chronic, and all that stuff. But actually, it was easy. You had those proper credentials in the streets.
He's a real gangster.
That's it. And he brings in, like, you know, Drayster and BG Knockout on this, both of whom were proper kind of gangbangers. And yeah, like you say, with that picture of Dre in the inlay and stuff, just making a mocker, just mocking his manhood, and
he's mocking him. He's mocking him with the picture, and he's mocking him with the title and all that. He's also mocking him with the music because Real MF&Gs is kind of like a faux. It's not a faux G-funk sound, but it's kind of like he's mimicking the sound on the Chronic. Yeah, but they do it really well, using it against him. And I just think for that reason they've really gone in, like they've really gone to town to get that sinister, hard G-funk sound. And I just think it's such a great track. Yeah, and throughout this album, really, I mean, it's on the actual title track is quite hard and quite vicious as well.
It's on is my favourite on there, I think. But just imagine how Dre must have felt like when this came out and just seeing that picture being made public and stuff. He would have absolutely hated it, I think.
He probably shed a few tears, if I'm being honest.
Definitely.
Any last thoughts on Eazy-E before we move on to the next match, Steve?
Well, just to go back to what I said, really, is that I think it is repetitive because it just disses him, but then there's some like random tracks that are chucked in that aren't dissing him, like the Boys in the Hood remix.
Yeah. And Give Me That Nut. Let's
Give Me That Nut.
That is Eazy exemplified.
It's funky and it's funny and it's easy. Yeah,
I love that. And one of the things.
Track.
Oh, it's a great track. Yeah, I love the beat. It's really funky. And one of the things I always love on the details is they use an outtake from Just Don't Bite It towards the end of the woman laughing. Yeah, I love that. It makes you think like he's got all this vault of all these like acapellas of all these recording sessions, and he's dug into it. And all I could picture is him going through those to find something to use. And same with the the acapella for Express Yourself that he uses at the start of
Don't
Down to the
Smoke
Last
Weed
Road.
or Cess.
Yeah. I love that.
And again, that's just something that completely nails Dre. His whole, like, he made an album called The Chronic.
Yeah.
And there he is, like a couple of years previous, saying that he doesn't smoke weed at all. It's just brilliant.
That is brilliant. So anyway, I mean that's that was a sort of, it looks like a very a formality for Doggystyle there, but from what you're saying, it was a bit closer than it sounds really.
Come on, y'all, get live, get down.
Live high, woke up.
It's in your sound. Come on, y'all, get live, get down.
Live high, woke up.
It's in your sound.
Live high, woke up.
The second game in round one saw the Wu-Tang clans enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, go up against Cam's Never Again. Rather unsurprisingly, again, 36 Chambers took this one, but by 2-1.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah, well, let's dig into it. I mean, I voted for Cam to make it 2-1 because as a sound and as a hip hop album, it's more up my street than Wu-Tang. It's kind of, the sound is a bit more.
Yeah, I get that.
It just doesn't. Well, I don't really want to get bogged down in my whole attitudes towards Wu-Tang. I'm going to let you two talk about Wu-Tang. But all I can do is vote for what I listen to more.
Yeah.
Okay. And back in '93, I listened to Cam a lot more than I did Wu-Tang Clan. I barely listened to Wu-Tang Clan's album. So probably says more about me than it does about the albums. But Steve, what are your thoughts on Cam?
Well, yeah, actually, I should probably try to kind of like hold my tongue in your kind of opinions on the Wu-Tang album compared
No, go
to
for
Cam.
it. Go for it.
No, because it is your kind of personal preference, and that's absolutely fine. And I'm just thankful that Larry voted Wu-Tang through at the same time. But I hadn't listened to Never Again. This is the first time I've kind of listened to it. I'd never heard of it, so it was kind of really slept on. I was really glad to kind of come across the album. It's got a kind of really funky West Coast sounds, classic samples, and I think I kind of like interested in the kind of lyrics and the rappers, and it is really interesting to listen to. It's a little bit political, just an enjoyable album. So it's definitely gonna be one I'm gonna keep going back and listening to. So thank you, Daniel.
That's all right. That's good to hear. Yeah, no worries. And what are your thoughts on Cam, Larry? Is it one that you listen to?
No, it's weird actually. Bizarrely, I did have the album at the time. It was one of the first albums I had on CD.
Yeah.
And the reason I had it is that we've got like a shared acquaintance who wasn't into hip hop at all, but he did own this album on CD, and I've never understood why he had it, how it came into his possession, but I eventually owned it. But I never listened to it. And listening again this week, I can sort of see why, really. It's kind of, I would just say it's fine. Like the first 4 tracks or so have really good beats. And I was listening to those thinking, have I been missing out on this? Have I made a big mistake? Like the music never veers into bad territory.
No.
But they're kind of unremarkable beats for an unremarkable rapper. Is the best I can say, really.
I wouldn't say he was a particularly sort of talented, gifted rapper. But the album, as you know, I gravitate towards the beats more than the rapping. Yeah. And it's full of great beats. It's funky West Coast stuff. Yeah, they're very good. I like, they've got that Ice Cube affiliation. I think he produced it, a lot of it. I was at least involved in
yeah, how many cousins has Ice Cube got? It's crazy.
Yeah. Everyone in Compton, and it's just a really nice album. One of the things, I just think it's an underrated album. And I think he's as a rapper, he makes up for his lack of technique with his views. He's a very outspoken rapper. He's got lots of things to say. He's a bit, in fact, to the point where he's a bit of a misery. Like I had a look through the list of the things he doesn't like and the things he has a go at on this album, and they include stereotypes, Christmas, Halloween, Easter, pork, and the white man. So it's a pretty comprehensive list of gripes there.
Is he like a 5%er?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, NOI kind of.
Yeah, and I was listening to it going, there's not a lot he does like, really.
But that makes it interesting. That's why I think I liked it. It was just
he
no one's rapping about that stuff. Holiday Madness.
Holiday Madness, yeah, and he's kind of like he's given the alternative view on all these things that we just take as kind of as read, and I like that. I think it's a good stance to take, but I do think it makes him sound a little bit of a misery.
He was angry at the same kind of things that Ice Cube was angry at.
Yeah, do you think Ice Cube was in his ear going?
I mean, the thing is with their connection. I was thinking earlier, like the only reason I can really think of that you would listen to this album is when you've lent out your Ice Cube albums to somebody, and you want to hear the next best thing, and this is kind of what you've got. Yeah. I think like he's a decent enough rapper, but like his voice isn't unique. He isn't charismatic enough to command your attention. He's just a bit kind of uninspiring to listen to. I think really it doesn't like someone. I get what you're saying about the music's good, the stuff that he's talking about is good. He's not a bad lyricist, but he doesn't have the charisma to pull you in or to pull me in anyway.
Yeah, I think his verse on Colorblind on Death Certificate's sort of a better representation.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's really
he's
good.
Great on that. I think he's great on this as well. But it's one of those things, you either gravitate towards it or you don't. But it's interesting that it made it onto the list.
I don't think I could pick his voice out of a voice lineup.
Yeah, I actually like his second album as well, Made in America. It's got some absolute bangers on that one in '95.
I haven't heard that.
Battle Cat.
He's got a verse on a DJ Quick track on Safe and Sound, hasn't he? And it's a recycled verse from one of these songs, I think.
Oh right. Oh, I need to.
I'm pretty sure it's a recycled verse from somewhere.
Yeah.
He thought, this is a good one. This is a keeper. I'm going to use this twice.
Yeah. Well, stand-up comedians do it. Why can't he?
Exactly.
Cool. All right. So that was in the circumstances, closer than it probably should have been 2-1 win for 36 Chambers, which we'll talk about more in the semi-final. The next game in round one was Souls of Mischief 93 Till Infinity versus Midnight Marauders by A Tribe Called Quest. This was another narrow 2-1 victory for Midnight Marauders. Again, I was the dissenting voice, voting for Souls of Mischief.
Absolutely mad. The maddest of mad opinions I've ever come across in this whole enterprise.
I just like staying true to the 1993 Danny.
Yeah, but it is a great album, 93 to Infinity.
Yeah, no, it's great. But the 1993 Danny didn't listen to Midnight Marauders that much and didn't like it very much, and did listen to 93 Till Infinity a lot more. But I know you, because I knew I would be the dissenting voice, and I knew you would vote for it. So this is why I didn't. This is why I went for 93.
Yeah,
because I knew it would get through anyway. So why is 93 Till Infinity not a better album than Midnight Marauders?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I never owned this album at the time for some reason. I'm kind of aware of how revered it is by people, and I can't really explain why I've never bothered to get into it. It's got some really nice kind of crisp production on it. It's quite reminiscent of the first Far Side album. I think, like lyrically and musically, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Of a similar kind of ilk.
Similar sort of energy behind it. Quite
so
madcap.
They got quite similar kind of voices as well.
Yeah.
Could almost be the same group for me, really, but albeit not quite as good. I was looking through the kind of production credits earlier. Like, I thought this sounds a little bit Dell-like. So it was no surprise to see that he was on there.
And one of Danny's favourite producers, Domino.
Is it Domino as
no.
No,
it's Domino from High Road.
One?
It's not. There's two. There's Domino, the sing-song rapper, who had an album in '93, which I almost made my list, and also the Hieroglyphics producer Domino, who was responsible for this, and Casual Sphere itself and things like that. So, Domino's a great producer, and I think this is probably some of his best work.
Yeah, it's got quite a sort of fun party-ish sort of sound to it. I think I'd probably be quite into it if I'd had it at the time.
Yeah.
But listening to it like this time around, sort of by the end of it, I was quite happy to leave it behind. Really, it's a bit kind of wearing to listen to. I think they've all got sort of quite whiny voices.
Yeah, I can see that point of view. I can see how you're thinking that. Steve,
And actually,
what are your thoughts?
and I think actually the title track is a bit of an overrated track as well. I know that's like seen as an absolute classic. I just don't really like the sort of pitched up like instrumentation in it.
Yeah.
I just find it a bit wearing.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree on that one.
Yeah, I disagree there. That's one of my favourite like singles, I think, from that kind of era. It's just
Yeah,
Lots of people say that.
it's just one of those, like the hip hop singles,
Like a Troy kind of
like
thing.
a Troy, like a Who Got the Props. It's one of those. It's kind of like one of those recognised sort of singles. But yeah, I mean, everything you said is fair. I voted for it. I listened to it more than Tribe. I think it's inventive. It's complex, intellectual. It was the kind of birth of that hieroglyphic sound. Weird, obscure, jazzy samples. And
that's why this was such a good. That's why this was such a good tie, Danny, because like Midnight Marauders and 93 to Infinity, they're not kind of gangster rap albums, are they? They're not kind of the really gritty other raw sounds that we've got from this year. So it was really nice to kind of put them up against each other.
Yeah, very jazz orientated.
Yeah, really funky,
in terms
jazzy.
of like the music, there was not similar, but they take a similar approach, let's say. But like Midnight Marauders kind of clearly does it a bit better, maybe. But yeah, so that was a 2-1 win for Midnight Marauders there. Coming on to the final match in round one, which is another East v West battle. We have Ice Cube's Lethal Injection up against Enter the Stage by Black Moon. This one was a 2-1 victory, and which is fairly surprising for me.
This is very surprising.
Victory. Yeah, real surprise. 2-1 victory for Lethal Injection by Ice Cube. It's surprising because I didn't think that you two would put Ice Cube over Black Moon, but clearly I was wrong. So yeah, do you want to explain that one, Steve?
Yeah, no, I surprised myself. I kind of looked at both albums, ended up voting for Lethal Injection, but believing that you two would vote for Enter the Stage to kind of make me feel better. And I think when I went back and listened to it, I probably thought I was going to like it more than I actually did. And it has got good rapping. It's got some absolute classic tracks on there. Who Got Props, Buck 'em Down, How Many MCs, they're all really, really good. And I wouldn't say there's any bad tracks on there, but there's lots of average ones on there.
Yeah.
And then Lethal Injection, which we'll talk about in the next round. This is my favourite Ice Cube album, and it's very different from all his other ones. It's much funkier, I think, and he's probably a bit less angry, if that's possible, for Ice Cube.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it was, I think if you were going to bet £10 down in which one I was going to choose, I'd normally go for the gritty Aurora sound of Enter the Stage, but I couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm such a sad sack, I made some predictions about what you two would vote for. I had this as a 3-0 win for Enter the Stage, so I don't know where this came from.
It is a surprise.
Yeah. Larry, so what's your take on Black Moon and why?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what I do? It did shock me that I came to this conclusion. I think one of the issues with Black Moon, it's what I would call a Danny special, this album, in the same way as like Sitting on Chrome, you did like an edited, you did an edited version of this for me, which got it cuts out some of the chaff.
Yeah.
Like for me, it starts with the second track, like N-Words Talk Shit.
Yeah.
Which to me is a much better choice of an opener for an album. They should have had that first, really. Yeah, and like just going back to when we sort of talked about Smith & Wesson in a previous episode, I love that Beat Miners sound, and I was really kind of heavily influenced by it for my own productions. But this just isn't as good an album as The Shining, and I think it's because it's a lot more of a one-note album.
Yeah,
like The Shining kind of varied the sound up quite a bit, but on this, like 80% of the tracks are basically like a heavily filtered bassy loop, which opens up during the chorus, And when it works, it's absolutely fantastic. Like Who Got the Props would be Buck 'Em Down would be like the chief example of that. I remember that just blowing me away when I first heard it. But by the time you get to tracks like Act Like You Want It, I Got You at Open, Enter the Stage, and You the Man, I could just sort of do without with most of those, really. They're a bit it's wearing thin at that point.
It's quite interesting though, isn't it, that sort of you're kind of looking for a consistency of sound in albums, aren't you? Everybody else says the best albums are ones that have a consistent sound all the way through.
Yeah,
but you've got to tread the right line, haven't you, between being samey and consistent.
Like, do you agree with that? This one is just a bit. It just doesn't really kind of deviate too much from that template.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
you two know more about the kind of production side than I do, but for the way that I listen to it, it tries to kind of be raw and sparse, but it just doesn't. It's just not interesting enough.
Yeah, if you look at the other really rugged, raw album from this year, Wu-Tang,
which is Wu-Tang,
it's just a lot more exciting and varied, and I don't know, this one, don't get me wrong, this has got like Who Got the Props is one of my all-time favourite tracks. It's got one of the best loops ever on it. The rapping is just brilliant. Yeah. The scratching on the chorus I absolutely love.
It's one of the best hip hop tracks of all time.
It really is. The video is just it is 93 New York hip hop distilled. Just makes you want to put on a big pair of like Timberland boots and a big coat and just do a really exaggerated head nodding dance.
Yeah, jump around. I think this album in general actually is a really good encapsulation of the 1993 sound.
Yeah,
it would pass that alien test if you had some really weird aliens came down and their mission to save their home planet was to find out what 1993 hip hop sounds like on planet Earth for some reason. Yeah, you could give them this album happily, and they take it back and they would probably save their planet from being blown up. Yeah, because it's really is what 1993 was all about.
It was great. Like there are some brilliant tracks on it, like Slave as well. Got a really nice loop. Another kind of filter down special, but really good. How Many MCs is a classic. Like that bass line is brilliant. The
Hydra break, you just can't go wrong with the Hydra sample. I go along with that. I do like for me, it's an album of phases. So it starts out with Powerful Impact, which I never really liked. I don't think that's a great album opener. But then you get into this block of Ends Talk Shit, Who Got the Props, Act Like You Want It, and Buck 'Em Down. That run of four,
solid run.
Yeah, that run of four is amazing, right? Yeah. But then it switches. It goes into Blacksmith and Western, Sun Get Wrecked, Make Money, Slave. Yeah, 4 tracks I just always like. I found them quite boring, and I would always skip on to I Got You Open, which I love. It's kind of got that really nice lazy funk to it. And then you go through like that one, Shit Is Real, Enter the Stage, How Many MCs, and I think there's 3 phases to it. I think that it goes from good to bad to good, and that's the reason why I never very often put it on and listen to it all the way through. It wasn't one of those albums for me.
You definitely pick tracks out of this one. Oh yeah, and I can see why you made me like an edited version of this.
Yeah, which seems to be a recurring theme of this. But yeah, I mean, it's a patchy sort of sporadic album, but the sound that it captures is much more. I much preferred it to Lethal Injection, which is why it got my vote. Loads of great singles, and enough tracks on it to make me prefer it to Ice Cube.
Yeah, I think it has. If you really kind of put a gun to my head, I think the general sound of it is one that I prefer to Lethal Injection. Probably,
I'd agree.
I do love that. It is like it exemplifies that kind of rugged, gritty New York sound.
Yeah, but the other thing I've thought about, they don't have to go on about guns a lot as well, don't they?
Yeah.
Almost every other line is about how he's got a gun and how he's going to shoot a gun. Give it a rest, buckshot, shorty. But anyway, so it didn't win. It's not through. Ice Cube gets through 2-1 and goes through to the Hip Hop World Cup semi-finals. So look, it's going to be an interesting battle in the next round. We've got Doggystyle, Enter the Wu-Tang, Midnight Marauders, and Lethal Injection. God only knows how this is going to go, but we'll find out in the next round. Yeah, going to be close.
Semi-final. Semi-final. that going to be? World Cup semi-final. World Cup. World Cup.
Hi, you join us here pitchside at the San Siro in Milan for the semi-finals of the Hip Hop World Cup 1993. We're going over to Steve now to start the draw for the semi-finals over there in his cutting-edge studio.
Who are you with this week, Steve?
Well, it's a bit of a sticky situation, really, because Danny has spent so much money recently.
Yeah.
The budget has been completely blown. So there I am, kind of like phoning around trying to get, like, hip hop stars for free. They just
I had to get your studio integrated to the FIFA mainframe, which was not cheap. It has to be directly plugged in so you get all the stats and figures.
Larry, I think we're going to have to kind of do some sort of audit of Danny's.
I know.
Danny's
The thing is, Danny, you said this money was for medicine for your family when we first invested.
It's a form
in
of
this.
medicine.
Yeah, and I was happy to pay that money for your family's medicine, but this, like press junkets and I don't know, just weekends away. Like me and Steve don't get to come on these things.
Laughter is the best form of medicine, and we all know that.
Yeah.
And look, do you or do you not want to see Steve floating in a green screen studio? That makes it look like he's.
Yes, but this is an audio format. Like we've told you this before.
Yes, but it adds to the verisimilitude if we can see it happening.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, I have actually managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat here.
Okay.
And I've got somebody for free. He's not doing much these days. It's former DJ Tim Westwood.
Tim Westwood.
So
what has he been up to since being shot?
Can I just address actually one thing from a kind of housekeeping point of view? That there was talk in the press a couple of weeks ago about there being, Danny, a breakaway competition from the Hip Hop World Cup, like some kind of super league that you were trying to organise.
Yeah,
but that came up against quite a bit of opposition, didn't you, for that?
I did, yeah. We were having talks behind the scenes. We got buy-in from several clubs and several hip-hop artists and producers. And for whatever reason, the hip-hop fans turned against it. They didn't want it. They saw it as elitist. They saw it as a money grab, much like Nas, It Was Written, and didn't want it. We've had to put that.
Can you confirm that it's not just on ice? That is that you've put that to bed now.
We've put it to bed for a few months for a consultation.
And actually, there will be sanctions for the next World Cup that Larry and I will be checking which albums you're putting in to make sure there's no kind of funny business.
Okay, some of my favourite albums get banned because of all the financial irregularities.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. I can't argue with that. Anyway, so we're going to do the semi-final.
Here's the draw.
Tim Westwood's shaking his balls. Give it a good shake, Tim. Steady on, Tim.
Right, here he goes. First one out of his bag it's Lethal Injection. Ice Cube's out first.
Ice Cube.
Closely followed by Enter the Wu-Tang. Wow. And then just to make sure that the other two balls are correct in there, it's Midnight Marauders against Doggystyle in the other semi-final.
Great. Ice Cube versus Wu-Tang and Tribe versus Snoop Doggy Dogg. Thanks, Tim. You got any new project? Oh, you can't talk. Sorry. Okay. Right. Well, let's crack right on with our first match: Ice Cube's Lethal Injection versus Wu-Tang. This one is an interesting matchup. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Crikey, yeah. So start with Lethal Injection. So, like I said earlier, this is my favourite Ice Cube album. I think the first 5 tracks are really, really strong. I just absolutely love it. And even when you get to kind of Bop Gun, full disclosure here, I can listen to the whole 10 minutes of that track without wanting to skip. There's just something about it that just wants to keep you going. It's probably George. Yeah, it's probably George Clinton. He's just an absolute legend. And then the album does, I think, for me, peter out towards the end. But, I think it was a real eye-opener for me going back and just enjoying this album. I don't know what you two feel. It's probably, for me, it feels like a funkier album than his other albums. And and maybe that's why I like it a bit.
Yeah.
A bit more.
Yeah, I do. I go along with that. I do think it's a much more a different type of Ice Cube we get on this album, and a different sound. It's a lot smoother. The production was largely handled by QD3, who was Quincy Jones's son.
Yeah.
We did a lot of the music for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So very smooth, very G-Funk led sound. But I think in making that switch to like more party tracks, you kind of smooth off some of the edges of Ice Cube.
Yeah, there is that.
And it's less angry, less urgent, which probably, it might be a good thing, but you kind of get that more Hollywood. It's the start of that Hollywood Cube. It's just party jams, smoother sound. And for some reason, that just doesn't quite grab me as much as his previous albums. I like that angry, urgent, sort of in-your-face Ice Cube with, the Death Certificate and even the Predator.
It's a really classic track, though.
Oh yeah,
Ghetto Bird is
Ghetto Bird is
a great
brilliant.
Track. It's
I was just
really
going to say that there are some absolute bangers on this album. Ghetto Bird and You Know How We Do It.
Yeah, really
good. These three tracks are just really nice. And there are loads of other good tracks, but it's just a bit more it's patchy for me. I didn't even put this in my top 10, let alone vote for it.
Yeah, it surprises me.
Yeah. Just never gravitated towards it like I did his earlier albums.
I was the same, to be honest. I've never really paid a massive amount of attention to it, like other than just knowing that I liked those kind of first three tracks a lot, and I didn't sort of realise how good some of the other tracks kind of later on in the album is. It's definitely better than The Predator, I think, which isn't necessarily saying all that much. I think what's kind of good about the first two albums is that they kind of pick like a production team or a particular production sound and stick to it. They're both sort of really cohesive albums. And this one is a bit of a weird mishmash of styles. It's kind of, I would say that at least half of the tracks on here, you could sort of broadly describe them as quite sort of G-Funk-esque kind of sound.
Well, that's QD3's thing, isn't it?
Exactly. But I think I would have really liked it if he'd just committed to that sound a bit more on the album. You've actually got a couple tracks here, like Lil Ass G and Enemy. They sound like they could actually have fitted quite well on Death Certificate.
Absolutely,
They're really good tracks, actually. I didn't realise how good they were. You've also got... I think you've also got, like, When I Get to Heaven is a really good track, but there's a remix of it that's on the Bootlegs and B-side albums from 94, which is musically more in the kind of G-Funk style. And there are also some other tracks on that Bootlegs and B-Sides album, like My Skin Is My Sin, Robin Hood, 2 in the Morning, that are all a bit more kind of G-Funky. And I would have liked to have seen those, like heard those on this album instead of those kind of tracks that don't fit that G-Funk style.
He could have picked a lane, couldn't he, and just stuck to it.
Stuck in it. I thought, like, if he'd have done that, and if he'd have maintained the quality of like the first three tracks, this would have been like a real return to form for Cube, and it might even have been my favourite Cube album, because those first, like the Really Dough, Ghetto Bird, and You Know How We Do It, like those are three of his best ever tracks, I think. I absolutely love those. Just a bit of a disappointing album. Could have been a classic, really, but it just a bit too much of a mishmash, and just not as focused as it could have been.
Yeah, that mixture of styles is to its detriment, definitely. It's a really good point you make about Little Ass G, because that does sound like it could have come off, the Death Certificate or maybe even the Predator. It's a Jinx production, so it's that's maybe it was an outtake from one of those earlier albums. Maybe. It certainly.
I have to assume, like those tracks that I mentioned, like Robin Hood, 2 in the Morning, You Don't Want to Fuck with These, My Skin Is My Sin. They must have all come from these kind of sessions, I would have thought. Or been kind of B-sides and remixes, or for this album. So it just would have been so much better, I think, if they were all on there. I might make myself a little kind of album, like a little playlist.
So Steve, any sort of low points on this album for you? Like, what would you say was the worst track on here?
I don't actually like When I Get to Heaven. That's definitely a skipper for me.
Yeah.
If I when I get towards the end, I very rarely get past Make It Rough, Make It Smooth. I probably listen to that, and then that's it for me.
Yeah, Down for Whatever is probably. I mean, it's interesting, different sonically, but I never liked that one.
Forgettable, sort of slow.
It is, and I don't like the bit at the beginning where he says, "My feet hurt" as well. He goes,
Yeah,
my feet hurt. I'd never loved that.
I think I'm just losing interest. I think actually what I'll do is I'll go back to the beginning and just listen to the beginning again. So it's so good.
They're so good, aren't they? Those first 3 tracks are just brilliant. Like Cambridge is quite good as well. It's a pretty horrible sort of misogynistic, racist kind of.
Yeah, it's quite shocking to listen to.
It is, but musically, it's pretty decent though.
In fact, I'd go so far to say like the first 7 tracks, because what can I do? Well, the first 6, because the first is an intro. But yeah, what can I do? I do like that one as well.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So flipping it over to Wu-Tang then, how does it compare? I mean, this is probably a silly question, really.
Can't compare them.
No. So what is it about Wu-Tang? What is it about Wu-Tang that you love so much, Steve? Come on, break it down.
The album itself starts so brilliantly. It's the first track is just amazing, because in that in the first 20 seconds you get that amazing "Do you think your Wu-Tang Star could defeat me" sample. Then you get the really hard and sparse drums coming in, and then it's the RZA, and it's like just so aggressive, bring the MF ruckus, and then even better is the first verse is Ghostface, and I think Larry,
one of his best. It's just a great verse as well.
It's a great verse, but it's also, I think, going back to something that stuck with me from a previous episode when you said about Ghostface being one of the greatest rappers of all time, and probably the best Wu-Tang rapper. And it's just, I think it's ironic that he goes first. He's the first one that we hear properly rapping on this album. And I think every track.
Everyone's got a good verse on Bring the Ruckus as well.
Well, I think every track on this album is amazing. This would be my desert island disc that I could take away and just never get fed up with. You know, you've got Plan in the front up, 30. When just get that start at the beginning, it goes up from the 36 chambers.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's just amazing.
Clan in the Front is a great Jizza solo record.
Jizza's just
as good as anything on Liquid Swords.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because Jizza quite often goes last on lots of the records, but he gets his kind of own one here because nobody wants to kind of follow him because he's so good.
Yeah. I have to say, it's a really tight. Like essentially, there's 11 tracks. I mean, it's a really tight, well sequenced, strong album. Every track is memorable. Every single one has great production, great verses. In my head, it was always a bit more overblown than it actually is. But essentially, there's like 11 tracks on it, and they're all good.
They're all amazing.
I totally get why this is such a revered album.
Like Danny, you're more of a sort of hip hop. Well, maybe both of you actually more kind of hip hop historians than me. Do you think I can't really think of anything that sounded like this? Like it doesn't seem to have like any kind of predecessor, stylistically.
No, it's kind of like
go along with it. Yeah.
It's kind of like raw and gritty, but so soulful at the same time.
Yeah. I think what was different about it was that it was so raw and so kind of like he didn't care if something was a slightly off beat or that was
like I said,
didn't fit the key of the song or something. He would just bring these samples in and out, and it was so kind of chaotic. I think that approach was different. Everything before was kind of married up and matched up, and it was all very sort of routine. Whereas this really kind of pulled the rug, and suddenly you had all these weird sounds dropping in and out, and then the kung fu samples and that sort of thing. And I don't remember anything like this happening before.
I said before about how kind of RZA, you see, he has bits where it sounds like he's got like malfunctioning machines. Like there's that bits like on the end of Bring the Ruckus where it kind of just there's this stuttering kind of sample bit, and it just sounds like the machine's knackered or something.
Yeah, and he plays bass lines over it that just have these weird bass lines that just kind of come in and they support, but they're not always they don't always fit the sample.
So it's sloppy, but in such a really nice. It's such a great. Yeah. It's like a really. It just catches you off guard.
Yeah. But it's always got that driving rhythm behind it. He knows his breaks. He's got all the breaks and the beats. And there's always got that hard underpinning rhythm.
really hard drums.
Really hard.
And like on Bring the Ruckus, like he uses like a finger snap in it. I mean, it's like the hardest finger snap you will ever hear anywhere. It's brilliant. And it's kind of, this album is just the complete antithesis of like the G-Funk sound that was kind of, you know, riding high this year. But I have to say, like, when this album first came out, like, I remember, like, me and my mate Dave were kind of really into like the whole G-Funk thing, and we would come and borrow like CDs from you, Danny, and this was one of them, and we were just scratching our heads over it, like just didn't understand it, didn't like it, and it took me like a year or so to catch up with it, I think, and eventually it clicked with me for some reason.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because it was a grower. Like as I say, like, you know how I feel about Wu-Tang. Like, I'm not the biggest Wu-Tang fan, but it kind of, when I first got it, I didn't like it, and I didn't understand it. It took me a while to decipher it. And I didn't, when I was listening to it for the first time, I didn't really understand what I was listening to, and I think that affected me going forward. I didn't perhaps give it the time that I needed to give it, and therefore that affected my ongoing perception of it that sort of lingers to this
like,
day.
If you were listening to, like, you know, Doggystyle this year, like this could not be more different, could it?
No, it couldn't.
No,
and I didn't have a lot of time for it when it came out, and because of you know, Doggystyle and all that sort of stuff, I just didn't give it the time I needed to give it in order to understand it, and therefore it's affected my sort of perception of it. But having returned to it for this, and over the years listened to it again and again, I really do understand why it's such a revered album. I can really hear everything about it. It
is great. Like like RZA, it's just such a kind of like caustic, like excoriating sound. It's like there's something about, like, you know more, Danny, but your kind of sample knowledge is better than mine. But he seems to be sort of looking for his samples in different places than like most of his peers were at this point in time. Like even kind of the other like new like East Coast producers, like RZA's stuff, it's kind of less jazzy and funky, less smooth. It's probably more of a sort of kind of classic soul sound.
Well, some of them are, definitely. I mean, Cream and Tears, you know, they really can't it all be so simple.
It's a kind of soul.
That's a kind of soul. Yeah,
it leans. You know, again, I might be talking out of my arse here, but I think it leans more towards like it's producers like Isaac Hayes and Willie Mitchell, maybe even different labels like Stax that have just got a particular kind of sound. It's just more of a kind of raw, stripped down sound to them. You've got for me, you've got a couple types of RZA track. You've got those kind of ones that take a chunk of an old soul song from that era, you know, the Al Greens and I think there's a Wendy Renee track on Tears, and who is it on Can It All Be So Simple? I think it's that's
let me have a look. I think it's Gladys Knight, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Gladys Knight.
Yeah.
So you've got that sort of track where it takes a loop and sort of very
the
old
Carmels
soul
as well.
Yeah. And then you've got the other type where it's kind of like a really hard beat, and he takes, I don't know, just a chunk of a piano, and then maybe even just pitch it up and down a bit just to create this kind of melody with the piano.
Yeah, like I don't know where like the piano on Method Man. I don't know where that comes from.
Don't know where that comes from. You know, kind of in the front, all those sorts. There's a very slight sample.
Yeah.
That he loops up, and it's
Wu-Tang Clan Ain't Nothing to Fuck With samples like a 60s cartoon.
Right. Yeah, you can hear that. Sort of thing.
Yeah, you can.
I love that sample.
Like, yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So, Dennis, you know what we've got to talk about is the genius of RZA matching those beats to those rappers.
Yeah, that's it. Because all of those rappers are individually incredible, and they are so original as well. They're all so unique. They don't sound like anyone else in the rap game up until this point.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. The beats fit the rappers to like a glove. Like the bit where Method Man comes in on Shame on an N. Your razor hit me with the major. That bit, I just love that. The way it just fits, and like when he's doing it, it's like earworms. They're like rap earworms. You remember those lyrics.
So many quotables.
So many.
I was listening to like Bring the Ruckus Out. I knew every word.
Yeah.
I don't think I could necessarily recite them like now, but just rapping along to it, I knew it like so well.
Yeah.
Well, look
yeah.
at
memorable.
on Chess Boxing is just an amazing track, and the ODB verse on there is just probably the best verse on the whole album. We're just, here I go, deep type flow, Jacques Cousteau, and I think there was something about read something about the RZA kind of picking Method Man to kind of choose to write some like the hooks for the choruses and things like on Cream. It's so clever. Thinking, I just know you've got a talent at doing that.
Yeah.
Think of
One
something
thing I did, I was looking through like who sampled earlier, just to kind of as a bit of research for this. I didn't realise that the METHOD man like kind of hook, that's from like a Hall & Oates track.
How is it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Which is a bit annoying. So I always assumed that he came up with it himself. But
Yeah.
Here we go. Quick quiz for you both.
Go on then.
9 Wu-Tang rappers. One of them only appears on one track. Who is it?
On this
only
album.
appears on this album.
On this album, yeah.
I know it's got to be Capadonna, hasn't it?
No, he's not officially a member on this album.
Oh, is he not?
No,
Inspector Deck.
Inspector Deck.
no, he's on quite a lot of them. He goes first for quite a lot. No, it's Master
Killer
Killer.
Priest.
Master Killer.
Master Killer.
Okay.
You've
Only
got to feel.
appears on-
You've got to feel sorry for those second tier Wu-Tang people, haven't you? Like Master Killer, Capadonna, Inspector Deck.
Yeah, they don't
Inspector
get the
Deck
same
is
props,
definitely underrated. I mean, he does.
Inspector Deck is brilliant.
He
But,
does
like,
some great stuff.
you have that first run of Wu-Tang albums, all of which are like brilliant in their own right. But yeah, there are a few of them that just don't get that opportunity to have an album.
No.
I don't quite know what. I guess like the other ones are a bit more marketable, maybe. Like, I know like Method Man was always seen as like the superstar of the group, but yeah, it's a shame that like Master Killer or Inspector Deck, like in any other crew, they would be like easily the best rapper, but here they're just kind of also rans, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So an absolutely solid album then, the Wu-Tang Clan.
More than solid, Daniel. More than solid.
Absolutely incredible.
Absolute
Yeah, I have to say,
classic.
I've really come round to this way of thinking about this Wu-Tang Clan. So should we vote on it then? Let's see how this comes out. I think it's pretty obvious, but Steve, what are you voting for?
Enter the Wu-Tang.
Larry?
This is really tough for me actually, because the one that I think I want to vote for doesn't come out on top true score wise.
Ooh, gonna be by the data.
It's not calibrated right this week.
So I don't know. Danny, do you have your answer, Danny? Or
Oh,
do you
100%. Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, let's break it down though. First, I didn't put either of these in my top 10.
Yeah.
So I would be thrown out of Exmouth Rap Club if they ever found out that I didn't put Wu-Tang in. But obviously, having reevaluated them both, Wu-Tang Clan is easily the superior album, so that's getting my vote.
Yeah, I think when I was doing my initial list, actually, I think I sort of only put Ice Cube in there because it was Ice Cube, and I knew that I liked a few of the tracks. I've kind of grown to like it through this process. I'll lay the scores out for you. It's a bit weird. Like Ice Cube has come out as a 4.02.
Wow.
And Wu-Tang has come out as a 3.9.
Oh,
so it's really, really close stuff, but I think I have to give it to Wu-Tang just because it's so seminal. It's their best work as a group. It's not Ice Cube's best work. It is a game changer. RZA is an absolute monster, and it's a proper album. It's cohesive, coherent. Yeah, it's got to be Wu-Tang, hasn't it? Really?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. For me, it's a formality. It's a 3-0 win for Wu-Tang Clan there. So that's our first World Cup Hip Hop finalist.
Come on, y'all, get live, get down.
Live high, World Cup.
In your sound. Come on, y'all, get live, get down.
Live high, World Cup.
In your sound.
Let's move straight on to the second semi-final between Snoop Dogg's Doggystyle and A Tribe Called Quest's Midnight Marauders. This is a heavyweight tie. I mean, these are considered two of the finest hip hop albums ever made.
Yeah.
Let's not beat about the bush. I mean, they are two of the all-time greatest hip hop albums. So where do you even begin to compare them? I mean, they're like chalk and cheese, West Coast, East Coast.
I mean, Danny, you're an interesting kind of one with this because you're not the biggest fan of Midnight Marauders, are you? But you are a huge Doggystyle fan. Yeah, I mean,
it's I mean, one's sort of, they're two very different, distinct types of hip hop. I'm a massive fan of Doggystyle, the album. I have to say, it was my most anticipated hip hop album ever. Yeah. Like when I can't put into words this sort of excitement I felt having ordered it. I knew it was arriving. Like I would come home from school every day knowing that I'd ordered it and it could arrive at any minute.
I'm pretty sure that I was with you when it arrived.
Yeah, you probably were.
Because we used to walk home from school. I remember when you had a CD that would arrive, your mum would put it in the window.
She put it in the window and I was just like absolutely like go ballistic. And but this one, like most of them I could, take it really, but this one I was so excited about. Like the lengths I would go to in the run up to this coming out just to get music from it. Like when they first did the debut of What's My Name on MTV Raps, I recorded it onto a VHS tape and then held up my stereo to the speaker of the TV to record it onto tape.
Yeah.
Because that's the sort of level of obsession I had over this album. I was so excited. I've never been this excited about an album. And when it arrived, I literally was not disappointed in any way. It was everything I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Like from start to finish, maybe a couple I didn't like quite as much, but really from start to finish, it's an absolute classic.
Yeah.
So many great singles, so many great tracks, even the skits you can listen to. I just can't praise this album highly enough. I don't know what it is about it. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. It's a perfect encapsulation of the G-Funk sound.
Yeah.
It's great at its absolute peak. I mean, just the G-Funk intro when it comes in.
Yeah.
Is just brilliant.
It's probably the pinnacle of the sound, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's that same bass line he's used probably in about 4 or 5 different tracks, but it just works, and it's a really crisp sound, up tempo. Lady of Rage, first person you hear rapping. I think that was a bold move as well.
Yeah,
Introduced the world to her. Such a great intro, such a great verse. And then you're into this corridor of amazing stuff. Gin and Juice, The Shiznit, Lodi Dodi don't like quite as much, but I still would listen to it. Murder Was a Case, Serial Killer, Who Am I? And before you know it, you're at Pump Pump, and it's over. And I can't put into words how good this album is.
How much do you think Daz is involved in the production of this? Because it doesn't get much credit, but he's kind of like got a bit cross about it.
This is the controversy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know much about that story, so I would probably defer to you two guys. Probably done some research into it, but.
I think just the general story about Daz is that he, it's always up for debate how much involvement he had in all of these albums. Like he would have it that he produced a lot of these tracks, and I don't know. I my personal opinion is that Dre he's a proper producer in the sense he gets musicians in and takes the best parts of what they do. Like he will take a beat that someone does, he'll bring in a bassist and just say, you need to play it kind of like this, and get him to keep on doing it until it's perfect. And gets, he doesn't write his own lyrics. He knows that he can be a better rapper if he has other people write his lyrics. So I don't know how much Daz is involved. I fancy he's got some involvement, but
I mean, listen,
he couldn't produce it by himself, could he?
No, I personally don't really care too much about Daz's involvement. I mean, for me, just what comes out of it is just an absolutely stellar album.
It's great,
with so many great moments on it. For one of the ones that I always love is Ain't No Fun, and I know I know you guys like it as well, but it's never the one that people go, oh, that's the best track. I don't think it's the best track, but it's the one that just sort of fascinates me the most. It's such a pleasing sound, that sort of tight G-Funk sound with the
it's in the pocket, isn't it?
It's in the pocket, really, really. And it's got a Nate Dogg verse that you can sing along to, every word of it. You
Yeah.
probably shouldn't know every word of it because it's deeply misogynistic.
Yeah.
And then Corrupt's verse as well. Like I don't trust anyone who doesn't know Corrupt's verse off of this.
Yeah,
Or Warren
absolutely.
G's bit. If you don't know Warren G's verse off this track, I don't
Yeah.
trust you
Yeah.
as a human being. Interestingly, my copy of this, and I've probably told you about this before, but I've got a copy that's got the next episode as the last track on the back on the track list, but it wasn't on there. And Pump Pump sort of listed a bit earlier in the track listing.
I thought the next episode was on the Chronic.
No, it was on later. It was on 2001, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but like, I want to know the story behind this.
Oh no, sorry, I get it. You're saying it was just listed, but it wasn't on there.
It wasn't
right?
actually
Yeah,
on
yeah.
there. It was listed on in the copy of Doggystyle that I've got.
Yeah.
And that's has always fascinated me. Like, this is like an early press of the album, and I want to know the story behind that.
That is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. Was it supposed to be on the Doggystyle originally?
But also, didn't your copy of this have G's Up, Hose Down at the end of this?
Yeah.
Which it's not an official track, is it?
Was it not?
No, I think
Isaac Hayes moaned about it, didn't he, or something?
Right. Okay. Like the version. I mean, I've got the CD somewhere, but I'm pretty sure it ends at Pump Pump, and the version that's on the version that's on like Tidal and Spotify ends with Pump Pump.
Well, but mine ends with Pump Pump, but it goes G's Up, Hose Down, then Pump Pump.
Ah, right. Well, G's Up, Hose Down isn't on the kind of the currently available version.
I think that's the estate of Isaac Hayes weren't very happy.
Yeah.
Or just Isaac Hayes when he was alive. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what more I can say about this album. It's a top tenner. It's a top fiver for me.
It's a fun and funky album from the beginning to the end, and it's just great. The thing you said about Ladi Dadi, I think that's a lazy effort. That's the only track on the album. I think actually, why did you need to do a cover?
It.
I like it, but it's just lazy. It's just why do they need to cover Slick Rick? It's just like you've got so much talent.
It's like it's the only cover ever in rap, isn't it?
Possibly.
Like rap, like hip hop is like it's not a done thing to cover people in rap.
Yeah.
Like as far as I know, that's the only one that's ever been done.
Actually. Yeah, I can't think of another one.
I can think of loads.
Can you really?
Oh, right.
Like Def Squad have done like Sugar Hill Delight, and there's loads of interesting covers.
Oh, fair enough.
Well, anyway, so Doggystyle is a top fiver for me, but in terms of its comparison to Midnight Marauders, I'm not going to speak too much about Midnight Marauders because I know how much you two love it. But it was never. I didn't like. I'm a low end theory guy, and I just when Midnight Marauders came out, I just didn't gravitate towards it. But I do recognise it's an incredible album. It's full of really, really great tracks, and I think Fife and Q-Tip are just absolutely at the height of their powers on this album. But I just, for some reason, it just never spoke to me in the same way as a low end theory, and therefore, again, that tainted how I felt about it going forward. But do you two want to speak a bit more about like why this is such a special album for you?
I agree with you. I think it's not as good as Low End Theory in my book, but this is the kind of third and the last classic Tribe Called Quest album. The skits are a little bit annoying for me, but as I always kind of say, for me, I love an album where all the tracks are good or better, and you can listen to it from start to end. There's a few tracks on the like perhaps 8 Million Stories, Midnight, Keep It On, and I don't like as much. I can listen to them without skipping, but they're not quite as good. But then there's so much on that's classic. Award Tour,
Electric Relaxation.
And they are absolute classic, aren't they? They just epitomise hip hop. We Can Get Down, Clap Your Hands, Let's Go. Oh my God, I think all of those are just really fantastic tracks. So
pretty much everything on here is like at least a 4 out of 5 for me.
Exactly, yeah. That's what makes it such a good album.
There's no 5s, but there's loads of like 4.5s, 4.75. I think I do prefer this to Low End. Like I've often thought about which one's better, but I have put it through. These have both gone through True Score now, and this one does come out a bit higher.
Does it?
Yeah.
How comes you didn't give Award Tour 5? That's just.
It's a 4.5. I don't know. A 5 is a very, very special track for me. But it maybe in a better mood I could have put some of these at 5. But I just think this album, like, it's just an evolved version of Low End Theory, basically. So it's harder than Low End.
Yeah, I think that's what I didn't like about it. I think because it's harder.
It's a bit more boom bappy, but I think the drums on it are really, really nice. I think it would have been a great album if it had worse rappers on it. But when you add like Q-Tip and Fife, it's just absolutely, it just elevates it to kind of absolute classic status. I think Fife is particularly
he's
good on this, actually,
definitely.
to be honest.
Definitely.
So many quotables from both of them, incredible flows. It's a rare album where I can just listen to it end to end without skipping anything at all. It's not to say that there aren't some, like Oh My God is a little bit kind of worse than the rest of it on there, but yeah, just got one of the great all-time album covers as well, I think.
Just looking at it now. With all the faces of all the hip hop people, they got to take photos.
Yeah. There's some brilliant samples, sample choice on this as well.
I like really unique samples as well that you hadn't heard before anywhere else.
I really like Lyrics to Go, which has got that Minnie Riperton Inside My Love sample. And what's quite kind of unique about that is that I think a lot of producers would have left that on the floor because it's still got it's got like a sustained voice note in it. But he used it anyway, and it just gives it this really kind of ethereal, like lovely, kind of swirly, dreamy kind of sound. It's just
it does brilliant. It really works on that track.
You got that really like on Electric Relaxation. You got that really great. Is it like Ronnie Foster? I think. Bass line. That's
one of the all-time classic samples. That is. It's just absolutely brilliant. That was always my standout. Electric Relaxation.
Yeah,
love
that.
That.
Yeah, that is a brilliant track. It's one of those ones where when I used to go to kind of hip hop gigs and club nights and stuff, it's the kind of like the crowd would go kind of mental for Electric Relaxation. Would be one of those.
He's such a good producer, isn't he, Q-Tip? It's got quite a unique style.
Ridiculous.
He's a perfectionist as well. I don't know if you've seen the documentary that was on. They made Michael Rappaport's documentary, Beats, Rhymes and Life.
Yeah.
You really get a sense of how in control he was over the group and how he would just strive for absolute perfection from everything they made.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that film.
There's
some sort of insight into how he works.
I think I've sent this video to you, Danny, but Steve, you should check it out, and our listeners should check it out. There's a video on YouTube. I think it's called something like Q-Tip is a Beast, and it's Q-Tip in the studio, I think, with Kanye West. And all he's doing, he's got a record player and he's doing like a live loop on this record just by picking up the needle and dropping it. And it sounds better than anything that I could do with Ableton or with an MPC. It's mad.
Yeah, it's a mental video. You should watch it. Definitely check it out. Right, should we get to the business of this vote then?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how this is going to go.
Well, this is hard, isn't it? Because this is like two albums or two producers at the peak of their powers. So it's amazing.
Definitely. So I can quite happily get my vote out of the way, and it's 100% Doggystyle. It's like a no-brainer for me. I just always loved it a lot more. So that's 1-0 to Doggystyle. But Steve, I'd like to know what you're going to do with this one.
Yep.
I know how much you love both of these.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. There's one album that is just, like I said, fun all the way through. Great production, great rapping, Doggystyle all day.
Okay.
Well, it's a foregone conclusion then.
Yeah.
So I don't know really. I think one thing that I didn't sort of mention about Snoop when we were talking about it, I mean, it's weird. Like I have rated it higher than the Midnight Marauders. Well, I haven't. True Score has rated it slightly higher than Midnight Marauders, and I do love the album, and it is a classic. But I did struggle to write much about it other than the production's really good, and it has got memorable raps on there and stuff, but thematically it's really, really fatuous. Like if you compare it to like its closest point of comparison, which is the Chronic, like it was, I'm not saying that was overly political, but you had at least some political or like angry and mournful tracks on that, like Little Ghetto Boy and like the one about the riots and stuff like that. Whereas Doggystyle, it is just about like a party lifestyle and Like, like the lyrics are about nothing at all. Like
How good he is,
it's
like,
just about I'm good.
Yeah.
I've like women fancy me. I smoke I smoke lots of joints.
I'll shoot you.
There's literally nothing more to it than that, which is quite. I don't know. Yeah, fatuous is just the word that swings to mind.
Not quite as much substance. I would go along with that, but the rapping depends on what you're looking for.
The rapping is good enough that you don't really care, and I didn't really think about it until today. I was really desperate for something to say about it, but it struck me like none of the songs are about. Like they could all be completely interchangeable. There's no theme to any of them. It's just bragging, kind of. Which hip hop has got. Hip hop has got a lot of that anyway. But this just is a particularly egregious example of it. And he's lucky that he's such a good, charismatic rapper.
Yeah,
and
he's
the
got Dre in his
production's
corner.
so good. And all the other rappers that are on it are great. Like the Dog Pound are on it. Like Rage is on it. It's like
let's can't go without mentioning RBX as well.
Yes,
surely he should have been destined for greater things.
I love
Definitely.
Serial Killer. Serial Killer's one of my favourite tracks on it.
Like his verse on that, Deep Like the Minds of Minolta, it's like it's the standout. Like you don't forget that.
Yes, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
he's got a great verse on the Chronicles, hasn't he? On Stranded on Death Row.
Oh,
one thing that I do have to mention about Doggystyle, Pump Pump, like the beginning bit, like the Sam Snead skit.
Yeah.
Like, better recognise. I'm so surprised that like Sam Snead, well, he couldn't have agreed to it. He's just completely cuckolded in that skit. Like he's out having a drink or a meal with his date. She spots Snoop Doggy Dogg and just goes and just completely ditches Sam and goes off to speak to him. And it's not as if Sam Snead is just some kind of made-up character. He's actually a member of Snoop's gang, who then goes on to be like a solo artist in his own right. But he's just completely cuckolded, and he just completely made a fool of in this.
He gets shot. He gets shot, doesn't he?
He gets shot.
Yeah, I imagine the money sort of eased it a little bit.
I mean, he just wouldn't have had he would like. There's always a weak person in a friendship group, isn't there? And he must have been just the one that he was like the junior member.
Yeah,
he was
Sam,
like
Sam, you can be on this album, but we've got a sketch we want you to do. Have a read of that.
Someone like that, you couldn't, like Daz would have been like, oh, no, I'm not, I don't want to do that, Snoop. I don't want to do that, mate. But Sam Snead would have just been like, Sam, don't mess this up. Like you're in with this lot now.
He was desperate. So what are you voting for then, Larry?
I really don't. I'm just going to go for Tribe, just because it's a foregone conclusion for Snoop anyway, and I think just because, I don't know, it's just got a bit more substance to it. I think. It's a completely different style. It's a bit more.
Doggystyle is just a Dr. Dre feast, isn't it? You're just feasting on his brilliance.
Yeah. I really would. It's so tough that I probably could give you like the opposite answer like in an hour's time. So I won't kind of think about it too much. I think I'll just go for Tribe just as a consolation kind of goal, really. For me.
So a late injury time consolation goal for Tribe there makes it 2-1 to Doggystyle. So that's the second finalist, and what a final we've got in store. We've got Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggystyle versus Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. That's going to be huge. Join us in a minute for that final. You join us pitch side again at the San Siro in Milan for the final of the Hip Hop World Cup 1993. We're joined here by ex-Liverpool funny man goalkeeper Bruce Grobbelaar. He can't talk, obviously, but he's joining us for a bit of moral support.
Why can't he talk, Danny? What's up with him?
Well, contractual, but
okay.
For our benefit, he's already doing the wobbly legs thing on the line, which is always hilarious.
Clown Prince of
football. So that's an absolute treat for us anyway.
It's hilarious as well.
Yeah, it is hilarious. So listen, we've got our 1993 Hip Hop World Cup final. Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers versus Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggystyle. Gentlemen, what a final we have in prospect.
Amazing.
Clash of the Titans, East versus West. How do you see this one before we go into it?
I mean, is this who we thought would end up in the kind of top two slot?
Yeah, it's for
Personally,
me.
yeah.
I think it's probably quite fair, isn't it, that they've reached this point?
I think so. I mean, they could have met each other in an earlier round, which is it's probably, this is the final we probably would have wanted to see.
Yeah.
For the neutral.
They're two mythical albums, aren't they? They're going to be in your kind of easily in your top 10, probably in your top 5 albums.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, one of them is for me anyway. So let's dig into it then. I mean, they're two great examples of two different styles of hip hop. We've said a lot about Snoop Doggy Dogg just being Dre at his absolute pinnacle. For me, Snoop Doggy Dogg is the album I listen to more. The one I gravitated to a bit more. It's more musical, it's more polished, and that was always my thing. I love Dre's production so much more than I did RZA's. I understand the impact RZA had on the hip hop world, and I understand why people like that raw sound. But for me, Dre's kind of studio craft always just meant so much more to me. He gave me more, hair standing up on the back of my neck moments. The excitement surrounding the album. It's just as I said, it's my most anticipated album, and I just can't see any other result personally than Doggystyle taking this, just because it's a top 5 album for me. Wu-Tang was never one of my favourites either. So I mean, this is a fairly easy vote for me. I'm going to actually lay it down right now. I'm voting for Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Surprise.
Whereas,
I think he should be referred to. I will always refer to him as Snoop Doggy Dogg as well.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not having any of this. It's the same with Common
Snoop
Sense.
Dogg, yeah. It's Common Sense and Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not having any of this.
And Puff Daddy.
Yeah. So Steve, let's have your take on this then. I mean, this is another difficult one. What are your thoughts?
Before the World Cup started, there was the Enter the Wu-Tang was always going to be my number 1 pick. But then preparing for this, I had a major panic because I listened to Doggystyle, obviously over and over again. And I was like, oh my God, I love this album. It's just so enjoyable to listen to. And I had to kind of like check myself and think, actually, am I going to end up like voting for Doggystyle if it gets to the final? And then I kind of I've done a bit of a Danny here and like just remembered how much I'd listened to Wu-Tang over and over again. I think it must have worn out so many batteries in my kind of Sony Walkman. I've just got such vivid memories of just listening to it constantly, Walkman in the car at home. I just absolutely love the album. So for me, it's definitely going to be the Wu-Tang.
It's definitely a more hip hop album. It's like, you think hip hop, you think 93 hip hop, it's raw, it's kind of boom bap. It's a different form of boom bap, but it's raw, it's beats, it's rhymes, aggression. It's everything that kind of hip hop purists would be looking for.
It's a really significant album as well.
Really significant, and it's a change, and it's a shift in a sound. It's a new sound, and whereas Snoop Dogg's album is it's polished, it's more musical. It's a different kind of album.
It's the pinnacle of that type of music, whereas the Wu-Tang is the start of a different type.
Yeah, and I realised that kind of comparing them is like comparing, say, what's your favourite child? It's kind of like they're both massive albums that you just like both of them, and comparing them is could be considered a fruitless task, but unfortunately that's what we have to do here.
I think on Doggystyle that you've got Gin and Juice though, that is an absolute one of the best tracks ever. Absolutely love that. And I really like love Serial Killer.
It's got great singles.
Yeah, great singles.
Like What's My Name as well. It's probably a bit overplayed, but that's like an absolutely iconic track. That's a 5 out of 5 for me.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah, Gin and Juice.
Gin and Juice as well. Yeah.
Murder Was the Case is just brilliant. Although I prefer the remix on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack.
I don't really like that.
No, I don't like it either.
I prefer the drums on that one.
Yeah. The Murder Was a Case soundtrack starts at track 3 for me, but that's one we'll save.
But the thing is,
Doggy Dog World as well. That's
Doggy
one of
Dog
my
World.
favourites.
Yeah, so many great singles.
Really nice and smooth. I love that Daz verse on it.
But then you can kind of flip into the Wu-Tang album, and you've got even more classic tracks. I think, we didn't even talk about Protect Your Neck in the first round, and then
Oh God, yeah.
Cream is just such an iconic track. It was actually recorded in 1991. Another fun fact for you there. So
Really?
So you've got that one, Chess Boxing, Seventh Chamber, Clan in the Front. There's just, for me, it's just, there's so many absolute classic tracks on there. Love it.
Yeah. I have to go along with that. It's just such a strong album. But what are you going to vote for this, Steve? That's the key.
I'm going for Wu-Tang. This is going to come down to Larry, isn't it? Larry's got the
I
casting vote.
It is a tough one. I know who I'm going to go for, but I'll just justify it briefly. I think Doggystyle is such a fun listen. Like I always it will put me in a good mood listening to it. You can really nod your head to it. You can rap along, or yes, it's fatuous, but it's also fun and funny as well. What you're going to get. You know what you're going to get. You've got some party tracks in there. You've got some kind of quite poppy, like What's My Name. Like you can sing along to the choruses. Wu-Tang Clan is a different beast. All like Wu-Tang, 37 Chambers is a different beast altogether. It's also it's exciting in a different way. It kind of it agitates you. It kind of angries up the blood a little bit. It gets you in a bit of a fighting mood. But
I also think we talked about this earlier, that, or maybe the opposite of this, but it's also an album that's worth listening to over and over again because it does reward you, and you don't. I think maybe it was you, Larry, that said you didn't enjoy it first of all, but there's a pleasure, isn't there, in those albums that you have to work hard to appreciate, or you're going to get hooked into.
Yeah. So it's Wu-Tang's a grower and Snoop's a shower.
Yeah.
And I think that's
summing it up.
Yeah.
You have to be deep into hip hop to like the Wu-Tang album. Like you could just a casual, all of our wives don't like hip hop, do they? But you could imagine them overhearing What's My Name or Gin and Juice or most of the tracks from Doggystyle and thinking it's just sort of nice, sort of R&B-ish kind of.
Yeah. You could just about get away with playing it, for the other half.
Put it on in the car or something without them. But musically, I think they could have a little dance along to it.
Yeah.
Whereas with Wu-Tang, it's not music for the casual listener. You have to, even people like I said at the time, I scratched my head over it. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And you really have to you have to be deep into hip hop to appreciate it.
It's a challenging listen.
Yeah,
it's a challenging listen, but here's the moment of truth. Okay, so it's poised at 1-1.
Come on, Larry.
Poised at 1-1. Who is going to be your vote and the winner of the 1993 Hip Hop World Cup final?
Lifting that beautiful gold trophy aloft. Yeah. It's Snoop Doggy Dogg.
It's Snoop Doggy Dogg. Oh. Snoop takes it 2-1.
I didn't think you were going to say that, Larry.
He'll be if it was an FA Cup rather than the World Cup, I think Snoop Dogg would have the top bit on his head.
Yeah. By now we certainly would.
Dr. J will be pretending to drink out of the cup.
Yeah. And there's some extraordinary scenes here instead. I don't know if you can see this at home, but they've got people running on the pitch. They've got the advertising hoardings over. Bruce is off. He's up in the stands.
Doing a joke.
He's ripping down the goalpost.
Doing something hilarious.
It's absolutely extraordinary what's going on here. I don't know whether that means it's a good thing or a bad thing that Snoop won. But anyway, let's so there you go. Yeah, Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggystyle is the 1993 winner. And I know one person who's going to be very, very happy about that because this is his favourite hip-hop album of all time. It is West Brom fan, ex-TV presenter, sports presenter, Adrian Chiles, who's he's joining us on a Zoom call this week. I took your advice after the last show.
Yeah.
We know
that Zoom works, don't we?
It's
what we use.
No excuse.
So if you've wondered what that black screen is in the top right-hand corner, if I just click on the button, there he is, and there's Adrian. So listen, Adrian, you've presented some of the world's biggest sporting events, Euro 2008, of course, the Olympics, England friendlies, but how does that compare with the excitement of hearing, or the excitement when you heard Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggystyle for the very first time? Because I know it's your favourite album. Give me your thoughts on Doggystyle by Snoop Doggy Dogg. You're on mute, Adrian.
He looks he looks good though, doesn't he? Looks
You're-
well.
Adrian, you're on mute.
Tell him to click on the menu.
It's
and
the
click on
little
mute.
speaker button in the bottom.
Hello, you well?
What's he doing?
On the bottom,
What's he doing?
Adrian.
So, I mean,
No,
Adrian.
it's not. No, it's not the laptop. No, don't put it down. Oh,
No,
Adrian.
Oh, you think he'd have
Turned it
practice
off.
at this?
Has he got any trousers on?
Idiot.
what is sort of ebbs and flows?
I thought he was
Oh,
a
I'm gonna have to
professional.
disconnect. I'll have to. I'll log out and
Tell
log
him,
back in
tell
again.
him,
Maybe
tell him
we
to
can get back.
reboot his hub.
Rebooted hub. Okay, sorry about that. There's another technological failure.
Ah.
We seem to be beset by them on this show, but never mind. We'll get him back next week's show. He can talk about the perhaps the 1994. Get him back for the 1994 episode because I know he loves Illmatic as well. So that's something to look forward to. Anyway.
Who doesn't like that album, Danny?
Well, nobody doesn't like that album. Right, so yeah, if you agree or disagree with our winner, or you just want to share your thoughts on 90s hip hop in general, then look, hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at Hip Hop World Cup. But for now, thanks for listening, and until the next episode, we're ghosts like Patrick Swayze.
A battle to the death. Classic albums clash until there's only one left. A killer contest, but before we get to it, there's rules to this game, so let me tell you how we do it. 8 classic albums, 1 classic year. Draw 'em out the hat and chew the fat right here. We rate 'em, we slate 'em, discuss 'em and debate 'em, analyze the beats and quote the lyrics verbatim. When all is said and done, we put it to the vote and tell you which of them is won. Then it's to the semis and the final for the final cassette or CD. So who will it be? We going all in, so on the sound of the whistle, let the games begin.
Absolutely. I